On today's episode, I want to share and react to the Athletic Dane Brugler's mock draft. But first, if you want me to do my own mock draft, hit that sub button down below. That way I can show my bosses, hey, this is what the Browns fans want. So hit that sub button, and if we get 10 new subscribers, I'll do my very own mock draft. Now, I want to just open up by looking at the current NFL draft order and where everything stands. So the Browns currently possess the 8th overall pick if the draft were today. They are in a tie with the Panthers, the Jets, and the Titans. That tie is broken by strength of schedule. The easier the strength of schedule, the earlier you pick in the draft. So the Browns, I don't feel like are going to be a top 5 selecting team. The Jags, the Raiders, and the Giants all feel destined to be 3 out of the top 5. The Jets are going the wrong way for sure. Panthers are kind of getting frisky. They've won, or not won, but been more competitive. So have the Patriots and the Titans. So I feel like between Patriots, Panthers, Jets, Titans, Browns, the Browns aren't going to be bottom 2 of that 5-sum. But let's get into the Athletics mock draft here. Opening up with the first pick that goes to Jacksonville, where it was Travis Hunter, the do-it-all man out of Colorado, and my vote if I had one for the Heisman. Then the Raiders took Cam Ward, 2nd overall, followed by the Giants going Shedeur Sanders. So let's just pause it right here. This is why I haven't spent much time talking about either one of these quarterbacks, because I think they're both going top 5, and I don't think the Browns are going to be top 5. So I haven't tried to get anyone worked up over drafting one of these two, because in order to draft them, they have to be available. And if they're not available when you're expected to be on the clock, then you have to trade up for them. And I don't see the Raiders or the Giants, who desperately need a quarterback, trading out. So I've just kind of moved on from both those prospects. Fast forward to pick number 4, the Patriots go offensive tackle Will Campbell. That's who I had the Browns taking in my very first mock draft. So just put that name in the back of your mind. So that's how the first 4 picks went right there. And like I said, the Browns, I don't believe, are going to be drafting a quarterback in round 1 because I don't think they'll be picking early enough. And I think those guys are going to go top 5. And after Ward and Sanders, there is no quarterback with the first-round grade, in my opinion. It's not a very good quarterback class. And honestly, if Ward was in like last year's quarterback class, where do you think he goes? I mean, if you just pick up his season this year and place it in 2024, I'm not even convinced he goes before Bo Nix, who was the last quarterback taken in round 1. I think he might be a guy that goes in the 20s. And unfortunately, that's just the reality of the NFL. That is, we're always going to boost up quarterbacks because that's the number 1 ticket seller, but it doesn't mean they're actually worth where you are taking them in the draft. Moving on to pick number 5, as we make our way closer to the Browns at 8, we got Penn State Abdul Carter. He's going to be really good. A Georgia edge/linebacker going to the Jets. I don't know what the Jets do. They have so many holes to fill. The Titans have addressed offensive line for 2 straight years. How about they go on the defense with Mykel Williams, also from Athens? And finally, with the 8th overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Mason Graham, defensive tackle, Michigan. I know the timing's not great, but just get to know the guy for a second. So Graham has been one of the most disruptive interior defensive linemen in all of college football the last 2 seasons. For the Wolverines, he has been an absolute menace on both the run-stopping department and pass-rushing department. 6'3", 320 pounds. I know every player in the NFL is big, fast, and strong. He's extra big, fast, and strong. It is like a old McDonald's supersize me. That's how big he is, and the size and the speed he moves with that size is just unfair. I think there is a lot to like about Mason Graham's makeup and profile as a prospect. I think he could be worth a top 10 draft pick. I think he's got a real shot at being a perennial, consistent Pro Bowler. And ultimately, if you're picking top 10, that's what you are shooting for, right? That's the kind of talent you're expected to get with a top 10 draft pick. And I think Mason Graham can accomplish that. I think he can be a very good player at the next level. But you might be able to notice a little bit of a tone in my voice, which is why I'm going to lead to this right here. How would you grade a Mason Graham draft pick for the Cleveland Browns at 8th overall? I think the last two parts of that are vital. For the Browns at 8 overall, I would not be over the moon about this selection. And it has nothing to do with Graham as a prospect, and I wouldn't be blown away if Graham, if he plays for the Browns, makes me eat my words. Top 10 draft pick on a defensive tackle. What positions commonly go top 10? Quarterback, offensive tackle, wide receiver, edge rusher, cornerback, right? 5 positions that solely focus around either aiding or stopping the quarterback. Defensive tackle is just not a cornerstone piece. I'm not trying to water it down and say it's not useful. It is. We definitely have seen how beneficial adding Dalvin Tomlinson has been. But when you pick top 10, you hope to never pick top 10 for a long time again. Or you hope you have someone else's pick in the top 10. And so if you're picking top 10, you should go get one of those cornerstone positions. And surely at one of those 5 spots, there is a good enough player worthy of the 8th overall pick. And so that's where I'm a little bit hesitant. If the Browns were locked up at all those other cornerstone bits, then okay, maybe you go defensive tackle. Or if they feel like Mason Graham is going to be just a consistent Pro Bowl, All-Pro type player. But for me, I feel like they have some holes at some of those cornerstone pieces. And that's what I want to talk about in more detail in just a second. But first, I want to give a big shout out to our friends over at Mando. Mando has the best whole body deodorant in the market. I walk to work most days. It's about a 30-minute walk, which in the Texas summer can cause me to work up quite a sweat. Or in the winter, when I got all these layers on to stay warm, you walk in a little bit sweaty. But when I use Mando, I come into the office pit stain free and not smelling like a used gym towel. It was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. It is clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. Mando is offering new customers $5 off their starter pack at shopmando.com with promo code CHAT. The starter pack is perfect for new customers as it comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, and free shipping. Luckily, I've got a discount code for everyone to get you guys hooked up on my favorite whole body deodorant on the market. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code CHAT. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you use code CHAT at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. So getting back to our conversation about using a top 10 pick on a defensive tackle. I mean, for one, the Browns are in need of some youth at that position, like Tomlinson's, getting up there in the age column. Shelby Harris is approaching 35 years old. Maurice Hurst is up there in the age column. Like, there's not a lot of things being grown at that spot. But you also just used your first pick in last year's draft in round 2 on a defensive tackle. Those are some premium draft picks being used back-to-back years at the same position, and it's not a cornerstone position. For me, I just feel like you have to go use this top 10 pick on a bigger impact level position. And while I don't want to just completely blow off defensive tackle, we all agree that having a Pro Bowl edge rusher is going to outweigh having a Pro Bowl defensive tackle. So for that reason, while I wouldn't be too upset with it because I think Graham is going to be a really good player, I think he's going to be honestly a stud. So I'm kind of talking myself back into it, but I just can't shake the idea of back-to-back years going defensive tackle with your first pick. Is that really what's going to be the thing that turns around this Browns team? I don't think so. Let's look at the rest of the mock draft and maybe find some other options for the Browns, like Will Johnson, the very next pick to the Bengals, cornerstone position. If you plan on moving on from Greg Newsome, you could pair Denzel Ward with Will Johnson. Also, Denzel Ward has a long injury history. Martin Emerson has not played very well this year. So if you have questions at the cornerback room, I think Will Johnson would be a great pick. I think he's a great player, just like Mason Graham, and he's at a much more valuable position, cornerback. Moving along here, speaking of another cornerstone position, you got the wide receiver out of Arizona. Although Jerry Jeudy, as of late, has made me much more confident he can be a number one receiver, so you can maybe save receiver for like round 2 of the draft. Speaking of cornerstone picks, how about this? Kelvin Banks, offensive lineman out of Texas. Kelvin Banks is a little bit of a tweener. Some people think he might be a guard. Some people think he might be a tackle. Sounds great to me. The Browns could use both, right? They just got to find some youth on that offensive line. They have not had a successful offensive lineman drafted since, dare I say, Joel Petonio? I mean, they've had some decent picks, but like none that have gotten a second contract. And I think that's a good measuring stick. They traded for Wyatt Teller. They signed Posick. They signed Conklin. Jed Wills was not a success. You're kind of due for replenishing the 5 guys up front early in the draft, especially with the way this offensive line is played this year, and it's just been so banged up with injuries as they get up there in the age column the last 2 years. So Kelvin Banks or Will Johnson, I think I'd probably prefer at number 8. Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. It's the same thing with Graham. Like, safety is just not a cornerstone position, in my opinion, for a team to use a top 10 draft pick on. I mean, Jamal Adams was really good with the Jets, but as a safety, you can only do so much to kind of elevate the entire defense. Luther Burden to the Cowboys. They got to go Ashton Genty there. This one, I like Luther Burden, but that just seems like a little bit of a miss. How about another defensive tackle from Oregon, Derek Harmon? This is going to be a fun one to watch for during the Big Ten Championship and then during the college football playoff. We've got East Carolina, the Pirates, getting into the mix here at the corner to the Colts. Another defensive lineman going to the Buccaneers. All they do is draft defensive linemen in Tampa. I don't know how they continue to like brainwash everyone to think they need more defensive linemen. I want to just confidently say right now, without fact-checking myself, in the last 10 drafts, 5 of them for the Buccaneers have to be defensive tackles. We got the new guy here at Chat Sports, Jackson. He's already going to fact-check me live on the show. Moving on here, another potential pick for Cleveland, although I think 8th overall is too early. It's the Minnesota Golden Gophers left tackle, Ariante Irsay. I like him as a prospect, but this will probably be a trade-back candidate. Walter Nolan, defensive tackle from Ole Miss. And then one of my favorite picks, just in value and just fit, James Pierce from the Tennessee Volunteers. Great program, I've heard. Going to the Falcons, who have the worst pass rush in NFL history. The Seahawks go offensive tackle out of Oregon. They keep him in the Pacific Northwest. Ashton Genty then goes 21 overall to Boise State. They're just getting going with Brian Robinson. That one's a bit of a head-scratcher to me as well. Tyler Booker, the Texans really need help on the interior offensive line. The Broncos have basically janitors and plumbers and electricians playing tight end for them, so why not go get one of the best tight end prospects since Kyle Pitts at 23. The next Wolverine off the board is Kenneth Grant. It's Mason Graham's running mate out of Michigan. Fast forward to the Chargers, and we've got 4 out of 6 Bucs first rounders were pass rushers in the last 6 years. Yeah. How do they keep getting away with this? Caleb Johnson going, we'll fast forward to the 25th pick. I know all eyes are on Genty. Don't sleep on Johnson. I think he's also a very, very good running back. And the Browns could use a running back, to say the least. Like Nick Chubb averaging 3 yards a carry this season. I don't see him coming back next year as the starter. Jerome Ford is not a starting running back, in my opinion. But I don't think the Browns should go running back in round 1. Round 1 running back is a luxury. The Browns are not in a spot to have that luxury. Just like how the Giants weren't with Saquon Barkley. How the Panthers weren't with Christian McCaffrey. They can be very good, but the goal is to make your team better, not to make someone's fantasy team better. So I would not go running back in round 1 if I were Cleveland. Maybe wait till like round 2 or 3 for this guy named Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee. I don't know. Moving on here, 26 overall. We've got a Kentucky DB going to the Steelers. Joey Porter's been up and down this year, so this one kind of makes some sense to me. The Packers, this one's the most obvious one ever. They love, just like the Buccaneers, defensive linemen. They go out of Arkansas, Landon Jackson. Fast forward here, Vikings. I didn't know Purdue had a player worth drafting this year. They won 1 game. Cameron Williams going to the Eagles is kind of like a raw prospect just to have them work on, which the Eagles coaching staff will do a great job of. Mike Green out of Marshall going to the Buffalo Bills. Von Miller's getting old, and I recently rewatched We Are Marshall, so this one makes sense to me. Alfred Collins going to the Chiefs at pick 31, and then the Detroit Lions rounded out with a linebacker, Jahad Campbell. I don't know, Jack Campbell. Could you have two J Campbells is too much for Dan Campbell. Oh, and Dan Campbell. There's too many Campbells. So that pick doesn't make sense. We got to rule that one out. But that is the Dane Brugler mock draft. I like Mason Graham as a prospect. So if you're looking for the short synopsis to take away from this, I think he can be a very good football player. So I won't be devastated if they were to take him because I think he's going to be a high-level player. I just feel like picking top 10, you got to go target a cornerstone position, and that's not defensive tackle. So who do you want the Browns to draft? We just ran through all of those names. Is there someone that jumped out to you, like Ashton Genty, which would be super fun? I think he'd be really good for the Browns, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of like Najee Harris when he got picked by the Steelers. There were so many other issues, especially on that offensive line. It didn't work out really for Harris in Pittsburgh. So let me know in the comment section below who you want Cleveland to select.